Guys, today I wanted to have a look at what options we have to execute tests within the Perfecto IDE, the native automation IDE of Perfecto, to create something similar to what we have in other frameworks, to structure a number of tests within kind of one overarching test. So similar to test methods within a bigger test or within a testing class. And if we have a way to then trigger these tests on a number of different devices in parallel. Right? Now, the Perfecto IDE is quite a simple and basic, but pretty easy to use interface, right? Which still has its place, even with Perfecto supporting Appium, Selenium, Espresso, XUI test, and so on and so on. This is still something that you might come across as wanting to use. Right? For example, if you schedule restarts of devices or cleanup of devices every now and just want to have an easy way and an easy option to create these tests and to running them periodically. So in this case, we just have a very simple search. Right? So the search takes a device under test, right, which we can define under, during the execution. At the beginning of the execution, it will just click the home button, it will navigate to google.com, and it will then perform a search by entering the string into the little edit field and clicking the search button. Once that has been done, it will verify the result against another string that we are using as the expected outcome. Okay, and that is it. So the test essentially just takes a string from us to search for and another string to verify the results against. Okay. Now, what I'd quite like to do though is not to just run this one verification. I might want to run another search with a different string and a different expected outcome. All right, so in this case, by default, I am entering Perfecto Mobile as the search string and as the expected outcome. I'm expecting on the results page to somewhere see www.perfecto.io. Right. Now, I kind of want to call this test a number of times to kind of pass different parameters. Right. In order to do that, I can simply create a new test script within which I call this original test that I just showed you. Right. And I can call it a number of times. Right. And every single time I can call it with different values. Right. With search value and with a value that I want to verify against. So I might want to use this to run positive tests, negative tests. I might want to group a number of tests into one bigger test in order to then trigger this against a number of devices. Right. So at this point here, right, we open the device, we execute a search against it looking for Perfecto Mobile and the result Perfecto.io. Then we trigger the same search, the same method with Perfecto Quantum Project as a search string and looking for project quantum.io. Now, what we're doing here is calling this on the same device. Right? So if you look at variables, there's just one device under test, right, which is being passed into the method both times, right, for both of these executions. And again, that's just an example, right? The idea is that we might have a bigger number of tests, which we want to run one after another against this same device, right? So what's also pretty important is that we ensure that the script execution mode is either unticked or is set to embedded or synchronous, right? Both options meaning that the test will be started and will be ended before the next step is triggered. Another thing that's potentially important is that we might want to open the device using this command here, right? So within the IDE, there's two ways of doing this, of opening a device, of allocating it, right? One is the default, right? Allocate devices automatically, right? This happens the moment that run is clicked. All devices that are anywhere referenced within the script are allocated, right? So that if any of these devices have a problem or are not available, the test won't even start, right? In our case, what I quite like to do is to not use this, right? But instead use the open device command, because this has the advantage that on error, so if the device is busy, if the device is not connected, anything happening, I can kind of deal with it, right? So I can catch this error and then, for example, implement a nice little smart retry, which might wait for 1 minute, 2 minutes before it tries to open the device again. Okay. But more than anything, this will try to run the test. Another thing that I want to do is set each of these tests also to catch, right? Which means that if there's an error, if this test fails, the second one will still be executed, right? And errors that we might encounter could be that for the search string, maybe the resulting page has changed, right? In which case I still want the second test to run because it might be independent of that initial test. Right, so let's save this. What we now have is one kind of overarching test consisting of a number of smaller subtests. What we still don't have is a test or this test being run against a number of devices, because when I click run here, I can set exactly one device. So what I now need is yet another script that I create, which now I want to call this overarching test, right? This big test, to test search functionality, right? Which now consists of a number of smaller tests. Okay. And now by adding this one, right, in the same way, I can reference it a number of times. Now what I can do is I can add more than one device under test to this one. Right. In this case, I've already added another one. I've renamed the DUT variable to iPhone 8 DE because that device is in Germany. It's that one here. All right, so it's on Vodafone DE and iOS 11.2.5. And I've added a second one, right, by selecting time handset. Yes. Right. Once done, I essentially have two tests that are calling two individual devices, and that will run this function on the specified device. So here again, it's pretty important that we do not allocate the devices, right? Because if we allocate the devices automatically, it will mean that the moment we hit run, both devices will be picked up and allocated to then call these tests, which might run into issues trying to allocate the devices themselves. So remember, we have set a open device method command in kind of this search functionality, right? So that one might fail. Another thing that we want to do is to run these tests asynchronously, right? We don't want to wait for the first test to finish before we execute the second one, right? So in that case, just go into into the test by double-clicking it, show the advanced parameters, and select asynchronous. Okay. One thing that's important to understand is that when we now execute this test, it might pass, right? Because it might pass really quickly. Because what will happen is that this kind of calling test, this runner, essentially, will really just try to execute this test and pass the handset ID, right? So it will not try to allocate the device, right? It will not try to intend to run the test. It will just trigger it. Right? So it will very quickly, if this test exists, this one will pass. If here this test also exists, it will pass. And if for both cases there is this device ID, right? It will not check whether it's available and will not wait for the test to finish. So if we click run, this test here will finish really quickly. Okay? Because it's just triggered it. So if we now look at the report, what we should see is my suite, which is running 2 tests in parallel. And for both, we still have an unknown status. Right. So what we can now do is move over to the device dashboard. Not to place. Right, and we can see what it does. So the iPhone 8 is already on the second subtest, so to speak, where it's looking for Perfecto quantum projects. And we actually expected to have project quantum.io as one of the search results, right? Which we do see for the same search. If we then go to the reporting of this test suite that we just ran, right? So this suite search function is actually this test script, which we defined as our test suite, which in turn consists of the parallel executions of the individual tests. So this test suite here in turn as well consists of the 2 test scripts, the test search functionality, which then in turn consists of the lower level tests. Right. So again, we've got the test suite consisting and calling the individual tests, which in turn consists of a number of, well, in this case, 2 lower level test methods, essentially, that are being called with different parameters. Right? And these test methods then consist of the actual actions performed against the device, like the click of the home button, navigation to the page, and the actual search that is being performed. Okay, and that is it for today. Thank you.